Okay, so what do we have till now? In the last video, we talked about baselining the code for our Nest JS microservice, where we introduced the Docker config, Docker compose, and we just used Nest JS CLI to create a basic application, and we were able to run the application on the Docker compose. So we have these two containers. One is running Nest.js, another is running Postgres. And when we are doing Docker compose up, and we are able to see that both the containers are up and running. Nest.js CLI is a CLI using which we have created a simple app. Okay, TypeORM migration. TypeORM is a framework, or you can say library, which is going to help us to talk to Postgres. So it needed ORM config.ts, where you need to specify a couple of stuff. Okay, I can just change it to large and something like this. Okay, this is more clear now. I mean, this is all microservice, and microservice is really a hype. Whatever we are writing in monolith, now we are writing a proper structured service which is minimal, like auth service, which is doing all the authentication related stuff only: login, register, reset password, forget password, validate token, and validate the expiry of token. All the things what is the minimal expected from the auth service, which will just give you the access token, refresh token, and all those things. And it will have its own minimal one or two tables in the database, which where you are going to manage the user session and the user properties. Okay, so if you talk about the checklist of the service, we can also talk about 12-factor app, which gives you all the information about, okay, how you should create your microservice. And here we are using Nest.js, so we are going to fulfill all those things with that. Okay, how? 12-factor app is saying, okay, you need to have a proper logging of all the events. So we are going to introduce a logger module. We are going to have, so this is the logger module. We are going to have a proper documentation of services, documentation of APIs using Swagger. We are going to write a middleware so that we can also protect the user data using protected API, protected routes. And we are going to write a middleware. For that, we will use a database module, which will use based on the environment, it will connect to the different environments. We are going to write a config module. What the config module? Config module will inject the configurations, runtime configurations, by reading it from the process.env to our application config module. And this is our repositories. I mean, our main module, or you can say the repository modules, which will talk to the Postgres and will help us in fetching the data. Okay, so Nest.js is a modular. Nest.js is really nice when you talk about the code structure and all. You write controllers, services, modules. For each and everything, you can create a modules like document modules, logger modules with the logger services. You can write database module with the database services, config modules with the configurations, and config module will need env from .env. I mean .env, you will be able to feed the data to process.env. And for test environment, you can have a .env.test, because what we want to have is we have the end-to-end test which we wanted to run, and these test these different configurations files, environment files, can be populated in the process.env. So I can run the integration test also locally, targeting to the test database. That's cool, right? And this database module will need a connection URL, which we are going to feed through the .env. Config module will feed the things to the process.env. Then the other modules, wherever they want to use, they wanted to read the port, host, and they wanted to read the database URL, the logging level, all these things they can read from here and there. Okay, so the quick overview, like what all things we have achieved in this example. I know you might not be familiar with the in-depth Docker concept, but it's all about Docker Compose, how you spin up multiple containers, do the volume binding and all. Here we are doing the volume mapping so that once we create a table and we just, until unless we don't clean the Docker volume, that table in that particular database will be there because the database you have persisted on your host machine. So even if you do Docker Compose down, container will die, but your volume will still be there until unless you manually prune it. Okay, you can create a multiple database using Docker Compose file. Here you can pass the comma separated. So our database is ready. Now the next part is writing config module, app module, logger module, middlewares, and the domains. Inside domains, we can have a shared modules, core modules, auth modules. Now here comes the Nest.js core building blocks. We are going to add a middleware. What middleware will do? Middleware will check, okay, if you are doing a reset password or forget password, or you are trying to access some protected APIs, so middleware will check, do you have authorization header there inside the request. Logger module will help us in logging the everything that is happening around the services. Okay, user request is this, now it is accessing this service. Documentation, here we are going to use Swagger, and we can have everything documented, well defined. That is the advantage of using Swagger. And in Nest.js, it comes out of the box. You just need to introduce one module, everything will get documented. You can also use some annotations to make the documentation more cleaner. Okay, here the database, for the database we are going to use typorm, Nest.js typorm. That is actually Nest.js provides it so that we can easily create a services and access the database entities and define all the methods. I mean, access all the methods provided by typorm repositories. Okay, config module, Swagger, this is used. We are going to use Nest.js Swagger for it. Logger, you can decide either you can use debug. Debug is powerful, or you can use Winston. So here you can use debug, and you can define the different modes, verbose, error, and all. And you can just do a console out all those things. These middlewares will help us. You can write any kind of middleware targeting a particular routes. These are actually interceptors. If you set a middleware for a particular route, like express middleware, then this middleware will execute first before you send this request to your service. Okay, we are going to write, let's say, middleware, where you are going to check, okay, user authentications, the user has authorization header or not for the protected APIs, and everything is there or not. Now repositories, here you are going to write the Nest.js entities, like you are going to have a user entity, and then using these repositories, user repo, you can access all the methods. User repo you are going to inject into services, Nest.js services, and once you have those services, you can access the defined methods for those entities, like user.find, user.find all, user.destroy, remove, all the methods, whatever those are there. So coming to after baselining of the code, now what is the next set of things we are going to take care is we will start writing controllers, modules, services, and all. Let's say let's delete this for now. Here in the domain, I'm going to create auth. So inside auth, I will have a auth module, auth service.ts, auth controller, and auth module, auth controller, auth maybe DAO service. Now these are like, this is how I work. I create these at least 4 different files, and auth DTO, where we are going to define the validation of the type, validation of the payloads which are coming, and also you can create another file is auth response.dto. using which you can actually make your Swagger look more clean. Like you can actually provide what will be the request payload, what will be the response look like. 200 response will give you this, 500 and all possible exceptions. All you can define in the response DTO. Okay, if you draw all those things, these are actually the building blocks of Nest JS service. So in Nest.js, if you talk about simple module, this is, you can call it as a module. If you talk about simple entity, this is a module. Inside module, you can put a lot of things. First of all, the controllers, where you are going to define your routes, API routes. Okay, get, put, post, delete. Then we have services. Services you are going to inject inside the controllers. Okay, you can have another thing is the DAO services. Services or repositories, type RM repositories, which are actually going to access the database entities. This is your database entity. I mean, this will feed the data to the repositories. Repositories will use, we will use repositories inside services. Services will feed the data to the controllers and controller. And here is our user who is requesting this get, put, post. You will send the data back, something like this. So these are just all different things, and in middle of these you will use middlewares, pipe, interceptors, filters, which are actually the building blocks of Nest.js. Like middleware, you wanted to intercept the request, only authenticated users. Interceptor, you wanted to modify the response before sending it to the client by putting the proper status code, proper message and all. You can use interceptors. Pipe, if you wanted to transform the response, transform the request, then you can use pipes. So what I will do is, if you're not familiar with this, I will not cover like what is the basic building blocks of Nest.js, but like I'm going to use all my services using Nest.js. So it's either look for my playlist, which I will put in the description. Otherwise, you can just talk about these things. So what are the interceptors, guards, modules? If you are already doing Angular development, like Angular JS, Angular framework, then it's very easy to understand the modules, exception filters, controllers and all. Okay, so, and these are the DTOs. Before that, I think there is a DTO also sitting here. There you can define a validation criteria. Okay, the email should be proper, password should be of 8-character length. DTOs will validate the data before controllers start talking to the service. And here we are doing dependency injection, because services will be injected inside our controllers, because these are also another layer of services, DAO services, and these all are providers. DAO services will injected inside us, will be used inside a services. You will do a dependency injection. Like I say, I send a request of login, and what I did is I'm just sending a username password, right? So first I will check the validation criteria. Okay, this is the post API v1 API v1 something like this. Let's say API v1 auth login. It's HTTP post, right? And what is expectation? If your login is successful, I'm going to give you the access token, refresh token in the response back. So what I'm expecting in the post is username password. So the DTOs in the Nest.js will validate, okay, both are not empty, both are string, email is a proper email using class validators. Then if there is a validation failure, then it will send you the 400 bad request. Otherwise, controller will forward that request to the service. Service will check the data in the database using DAO helper services, which are using the database repositories, type ORM repositories. So this is how this Nest.js basic structure works. This is common for all the APIs. You write login, register, reset password, forget password, or any kind of any service you are writing in any microservice. You will write controllers, services, DAO helpers, response DTOs, request DTOs, modules, everything is inside a module, right? And then you create a shared module, core modules, and then in your whole app there will be an app module. This is app module. This is actually the root module. Now what will happen is, this is, let's say, your first auth module. You will put the auth module here. Similarly, you will create another module. Here you will put a, let's say, shared module or database module. Then you will inject database module again to the app module, because there will be one root module and all other are shared modules. Database module, I'll just put the names all here. Shared module. All you inject in the app module, and then here is your main.ts file, which is bootstrapping the whole app. If you look into the code, what we are doing here is, here is your app module, right? Here is your main.ts. Main.ts is importing the root module. Now inside app module, you will provide all, you will import all the other third-party modules like typeorm module, shared module, core module, auth module, all the other modules which you are going to code, like logger module, config module, swagger module. All the modules you will put here. Some are predefined, like Nest.js provides Nest.js typeorm, Nest.js swagger, and all these things. Some you are going to code, like auth module, logger module, config module, database module. You will write your own modules. You will put it here, all the controllers and services of app module, because now the domain module will have its own controller services modules like this. Here I will put inside auth module, I will write auth module here also. Let's say this is auth module. So we don't have any controllers and services for now, but we will create them. So this auth module you will import, and you will put that inside the domain module first. I mean, this is how we will create a layers. Inside domain, all you put all your domains. Inside domain modules, you can put you will import all these modules. This is your auth module, and this is your domain module. Now all your application related module you will import here. Do is auth module. Now there may be another folder which is saying is shared or core module. So from core you will export a core module. Let's say core.module.ts. So you will import the core module here. Now what happens is, now domain module is everything. You just import the domain module inside app module and you are done, because domain module will take care of importing other sub modules. So the hierarchy is, you have sub modules. On top of that, sub module 1 and 2, 3, you have a domain module, then you have app module, and your main.ts, which is bootstrapping the application. Okay, something like this. So this is our pretty much our structure. Now what we will do is, because it's a baseline and I'm going to write this code only once for all the services, so I'm not in hurry. We will write a logger module. We will write a this database module and database service, which is going to use typeorm module, because we can also write something here. What it does is, it uses the typeorm module. So we already have the typeorm module added in the package.json, so we can import that database module or typeorm module anywhere we want. So db module, we can write a injectable classes and module here. So we'll write a db module. So like say export class db module, and inside db module, because we are going to initialize the database module and pass, we are going to use typeorm. So we can also look into documentation. So it's not a surprise, because I'm going to use a little different approach, how we can create database module. First of all, these module dependencies, and then this is a database module. What we are passing a service, and what this service is doing, service is taking all the data source. Here, what is a type, what is a host, what is port, username, password, and all. So it's like a async initialization. We are passing all these parameters from process.env, created a database provider, initialized it, and we passed it. Now this database module you can pass to your app module, and then you start accessing these repositories by injecting them. Okay, similarly, like Swagger is easy. This is how you set up the Swagger for your application. You'll just copy this code before bootstrapping our application. And what else, we can just directly get it from here. I mean, you can just go through it if you're really interested in understanding it, like how we are creating a dynamic module, what are the lifecycle events, and what is a controller, how it looks like. Simple controller is like this. You will tag the controller user, and then you will define all the get, put, post methods. This is how we create a modules. This is how we define the dependencies. App module, root module, all the user module, order module, shared module, they may have dependency of other feature modules. Middlewares, pipes, guards, interceptors, providers is like a services we are creating. Providers all are injectable, and inside this either you can inject another helper service, or this injectable service will be injected inside a controllers. So you might see some example somewhere, because inside a controller we inject the service, and then from the once the request arrives, you call the service method to get the data. Okay, so first of all we will write the database module. This is how we will go, this database module. Then we will write each and every module, like config module, which is we can use the config module directly from here, like Nest JS config. If we are writing a vanilla express, then we use .env and all these methods to inject the runtime and configurations to the process.env. But you can write a config module.for root. This is the config module. What it does is, it will, you just need to add this in your root module. It will actually populate the whatever you put in .env to process.env. But we may have different environment like development, stage, production. So based on the config file name also you can do. We are writing it little differently, so we will write our config service. So in the next video, that will be again lengthy. I'm going to put all these things together, and we are going to have a baseline ready. I can say this semi baseline ready, because we have the Docker ready, and Hello World app is running. That is a starter API which is running. But now we need to have our building blocks ready, so that we can start writing the actual auth service by writing to the user table. This is a one-time setup which I'm doing. After that, I'm not going to talk about these basic things. Thanks everyone.